who I am and the essence of me and the things that I choose to do as a grown-ass woman can inspire you to do the same. You don't have to be like me. You need to be like you. And never, ever let somebody stop you or shame you from being yourself.
I couldn't help but stumble across this article by Time magazine introducing the new Entertainer of the Year, Lizzo. Certain things kind of caught my eye here, especially reading here. Her song is in the Walmart commercial with the dancing cart people, and another one is in an ad for Grubhub. Shocking. A riff from her song Good as Hell. And this last part here, your daughter is locked in her bedroom scream singing, I just took a DNA test. Turns out I'm 100% that bitch. From Lizzo's #1 hit, Truth Hurts, in her mirror right now. Truth. How ironic. In the beginning it says here, in the year of our Lord, 2019. The year of our Lord. In a postmodern, post-reality, post-op, schizo-positive year of 2019, what Lord could they be possibly referring to here? Possibly one of light and leisure? Lucifer is pretty much all that comes to mind. Lucifer, I mean Lizzo, has now been given the prestigious title of Entertainer of the Year. Some might be surprised and even perturbed by this announcement, but I believe it's perfectly fitting and makes complete sense. What better person to represent the face and bloated frame of 2019 entertainment? Does she not embody all that comprises the Barnum and Bailey melee of mainstream art and culture that we have been spoon-fed and indoctrinated with this year? It seems as if everything has been building up for such a mammoth-like proportion of exciting and riveting entertainment, if you ask me. Who else would fit the title? Lil Nas X, sitting on a rainbow in a pair of open-back chaps? You know, just a round-the-way boy at the corner shop sucking on a lollipop. If I were a betting man, I'd say it was surely runner-up. But let's get back to the reputable and top-tier writing of Time magazine. Of course, her music is used in a Grubhub ad. Doesn't take a physics professor to figure that power couple out. Oh, a hit song called Good as Hell. Sounds like an oxymoron to me. Good as hell? Amazing. Oh, and of most importance, the targeting of your daughter singing sweet and obese nothings of Lizzofer. The moral leader and role model all parents have been looking for since, say, Madonna. If you can get through this article without throwing up in your mouth a little bit, I congratulate you. I wasn't as successful, and that's why we will not be covering any more of this bucket slop journalism. So what's the real point here? To put it in a phrase, we could look at this as peak degeneracy. I will attempt to list several points that are of importance regarding this Entertainer of the Year celebration, and of course, this Lizzo character is obviously a distraction and smokescreen for things much bigger and much darker. But I aim to use this event as an opportunity to shed light on some things that this distraction is administering on the back end. No pun intended. And no, I will not be discussing her mono-cheek revelation of recent Laker game festivities. Forgive me. Here, I will be briefly detailing the psychological profile of this artist that I believe describes very clearly what it is we are seeing. I also will be presenting a set of ideas that will explain the cultural implications of this artist and her behaviors. Let's dig in. To start, and as usual, these types of entertainers never cease to be suffering from deep-seated psychological and spiritual disturbances. Causes tend to originate in traumatic childhoods, of course, but I maintain that these traumas are now, and more than ever, being exacerbated by an enabling toxic media and entertainment culture that cultivates the most disoriented and delusional perspectives. let's use another phrase to present a specific description of the artist Lizzo, and that is coddling the narcissistic child. Coddling, or pampering, to treat with extreme or excessive care or kindness, is the precise treatment mainstream media has given the artist thus far. I also make the argument in my work that this form of coddling has become therefore cultural and has been the method of population management in our time as of late. I also use the terms toxic empathy or irrational sympathy to describe the emotional handling of our current society. Coddling a child, a group, or population weakens the subject or subjects at their core. It promotes and breeds codependency, whilst breaking one's personhood, destabilizing identity, stealing their will by shaping it for them through persuasive and manipulative tactics. How can one be themselves when they do not authentically know who they are? Surprisingly, Lizzo is constantly telling people to just be yourself. How is one to know? When essentially they are but a concoction of popular cultural tropes. Guidance by libido, processed through a fake-it-till-you-make-it state of mind. And if this is true, that one truly does not know themselves, who exactly is it that they are enacting? So shame and guilt is used to gaslight society into submission to the postmodern status quo. Emotional appeals seem to be the prime source of manipulation today. In response to this, a person fails to naturally develop a healthy identity and stable perspective of the world around them. A false self is created, and irrational behaviors and beliefs are produced in the subject and acted out in the environment. This can be described by the term subclinical narcissism, that often can mutate into full-blown diagnosable personality disorders. Letting a child have whatever they want, whenever they want, however they want it, even when those things are counterproductive or even dangerous to their well-being or society at large, is not only a form of abuse and example of trauma, but it is a textbook recipe for producing the narcissistic personality. My theory is that media and the subsequent culture that follows is a cyclical process of narcissistic formation. From celebrity to populace, the disorder is passed down and reconstituted. As we have discussed before, narcissism as a psycho-spiritual disorder is a product of trauma and abuse. But it must be mentioned that spoiling, coddling, and enabling in the extreme is also equally abusive, thus equally produces malignant narcissistic features. For a deeper understanding of this dynamic, I suggest you view my series addressing the cultural phenomenon known as thoughterry and the thought archetype. I go into much depth in that series regarding how all of this manifests. The point here is that Lizzo is a perfect example of this narcissistic enabling and formation. Lizzo demonstrates the perfect example of malignant self-regard, irrational self-love, and toxic self-esteem. For instance, a lifestyle and bodily presentation that has been scientifically proven to cause death, depression, diabetes, obesity, and high blood pressure is being completely ignored and instead praised, propped up, and promoted in the guise of pride, empowerment, self-love, and all for the sake of being nice. Could we not see how this can be considered toxic self-esteem? Because it is a self-esteem that is encouraged, even at the expense of the subject's psychological, spiritual, and physical well-being. Today, what someone likes or deems enjoyable or gratifying supersedes the potential for negative effects, harmful implications, or consequences. It's like giving a heroin addict free drugs and needles because they enjoy the feeling of its chemical reactions in their body, even though it is slowly killing them and will ultimately result in their early demise. Is this empathic to you? Or is it psychopathic? I would argue that the latter is true, and the former is a delusion. Welcome to the post-reality era, the year of 2020. Are these the people you put your trust in? Are these the perspectives you endorse to shape your view of the world, politics, society, and personal health? Think about it. Time magazine has fully established our current societal milestone of peak degeneracy, with Lizzo as the pageant queen. Here we find hypersexual views, death in the form of empowerment, obnoxious and childlike behavior as a part of adulthood, and malignant self-love as a way of life. It's being promoted to every young person across the globe by arguably one of the largest and most influential media sources to ever exist. Are we surprised? No. But are we going to be quiet about it and chalk it up as part of the Matrix? Absolutely not. Let's look at the contradiction of this alleged empathic and progressive worldview we find in body positivity and postmodern progressivism. It is a known fact that within the modern Black community, several ailments debilitate the collective health of the population. 3 main ailments are high blood pressure, heart disease, and of course, diabetes. Lizzo, a Black woman, openly promotes a lifestyle and cultural perspective or worldview that directly promotes the inherent increase of these 3 debilitating ailments. Would you consider this empathic or psychopathic? I would say the latter is true. Her obvious response to this matter and her "I'ma do me" attitude sold as social progress is blatant and malignant self-absorbed narcissism in its purest form. A 30-something-year-old with the disposition and intelligence of a 16-year-old child. She embodies the arrested development of this current generation, where meaning becomes a mood, and being sexy is the pinnacle of human value. All at the expense of not merely her own community, but the society at large. This individual promotes a lifestyle of death and self-worship for her own needs, wants, and personal comforts. All the while still professes she is unhappy and obviously suffers from some deep insecurities. We gather this by the display of the systematic and strategic angles she takes in her photos, concealing her abdomen, the standard flaunting of artificial horsehair extensions from her scalp, and caked residue of makeup chemicals that grip the slopes of her face, completely contradicting any suggestion of true acceptance and love of one's appearance and oneself. I would argue she props up a false self to appease the eternal void of the true self. She seems to attempt the convincing of herself that she is worthy by convincing you that she believes she is. Further, this describes her irrational behavior and inability to live in reality, instead subjecting her fans and society to a madness and discontent hidden beneath tired aphorisms and cheap attempts at piety. But when these contradictions are discussed and addressed, people are called haters, bigots, and losers. This artist seems to only appeal to the most base levels of human instincts, animalistic even, an inherent focus on the flesh, the body, sexual activities, and ultimately a solipsist worldview of self-gratification. No virtuous character, integrity, dignity, humility, knowledge, or godliness, just pure and unadulterated narcissism. Luciferian self-worship, as it were. As the next prop and prize-promoted Mother Goddess figure, we see the new installation of the neo-pagan and New Age matriarchy. The destruction of God's order and elimination of the sacred male, at the same time destroying the nature of the woman through the promotion and praising of the disillusioned, egomaniacal, and self-seeking postmodern female. See, the flesh is unruly and captivating. This is why it is of constant focus via mainstream media, and readily found in popular culture. Here we discover the Gramscian technique of cultural hegemony. By use of media and political conditioning, collective worldview reform, and the Delphi method, they use culture as a foot-in-the-door technique, where the individual's perspectives are hijacked and the collective group is molded into proper shape. Here we find the newspeak term culture used as a euphemism for systematic and collective amoral behaviors. Again, how can you be yourself when you do not know yourself? You default to the flesh in the form of sexuality, attention-seeking interests, and a preoccupation with self-worship. Hence our entertainer of the year, Lizzo, the patron saint of self-love. The fat lady has sung.
My emotions, I'm the happiest I've ever been. I'm surrounded by love, and I just want to spread that love and also spread these cheeks.